Guten Morgen Berlin! Ein herzliches Willkommen zum diesjährigen AWS Summit hier in Berlin. Ich freue mich sehr, dass Sie sich heute die Zeit nehmen, hier mit uns den Tag zu verbringen, unsere Lösungen kennenzulernen, unsere Produkte, aber auch natürlich verschiedene Kundenbeispiele besser kennenzulernen. Ich freue mich besonders, jedes Jahr hier diese wachsende Community zu sehen. Heute haben wir ein bisschen eine Besonderheit. Wir haben Kollegen, Teams und natürlich Kunden und Partner in der Schweiz, die uns via Livestream verfolgen. Und die wollen wir jetzt alle gemeinsam begrüßen. Da müssen Sie mir jetzt ein bisschen dabei helfen. Ich hätte die Bitte, dass wir auf 3 alle Grüezi sagen. Okay? 1, 2, 3. Grüezi. Wunderbar. Dankeschön. Gut. Für AWS und mich ist dieser Summit natürlich was ganz Besonderes, da uns 2 Tage sehr eng zusammenbringt und uns natürlich sehr intensive Zeit miteinander beschert. Wir hören Ihnen zu, wir lernen von Ihnen, wir nutzen diese Informationen und die Herausforderungen, die Sie daraus aus Ihren Lösungen, aus Ihren Kundenbeispielen haben, um letztlich diese Informationen für unsere Produkte und Lösungen zu verwerten. 95% unserer heutigen Services und Features sind auf Basis dieses Feedbacks, auf Basis dieser Erfahrungen letztlich entstanden. Und das wollen wir zukünftig natürlich auch weiter so tun. Wir haben erneut eine Menge Aufwand und Zeit investiert, um diesen Summit heute und morgen zum bisher größten bisher zu machen. Wir wollen ihn aber natürlich auch zum informativsten machen. Und für mich wäre das eine klasse Sache, wenn Sie morgen am Ende des Tages nach Hause gehen und sagen, hey, die 2 Tage waren sehr viel wert und ich habe die Zeit sinnvoll investiert. Gut, wir haben heute vor Ort ca. 4.500 Teilnehmer und wir erwarten für beide Tage über 6.000 Teilnehmer. Damit ist es der größte Summit bisher und es ist keine typische Sales- oder Marketing-Veranstaltung, sondern unser Ziel ist es, Ihre Zeit möglichst sinnvoll zu nutzen und das Learning, was Sie mitnehmen, letztlich zu maximieren. Wir haben 65 Partner auch draußen im Ausstellungsbereich und viele, viele Kunden und Kundenbeispiele mitgebracht, die herausragende Lösungen zusammen oder auch natürlich alleine erstellt haben. Ich möchte Sie einfach bitten und ermutigen, dieses direkte Gespräch mit diesen Kunden und Partnern zu suchen und aus erster Hand zu erfahren, wie diese Dinge entstanden sind. Um auf Ihre Bedürfnisse ein Stück weit besser eingehen zu können, ich hatte es eingangs erwähnt, dieses Jahr als erstes Mal 2 Tage. Wir haben aus dem Eintages-Event 2 Tage gemacht. Warum? Weil wir festgestellt haben, wir haben sehr technisch orientierte Menschen, Architekten, IT-Verantwortliche, auf der anderen Seite Business Decision Maker, die mehr sozusagen an den jeweiligen Geschäftslösungen interessiert sind. Das heißt, wir werden uns heute tiefer um Technologie und Technik kümmern, während morgen werden wir mehr praktische Beispiele aus dem Business haben. Wir haben eine umfangreiche Agenda vorbereitet mit 10 individuellen Tracks, aber ungefähr 100 Breakout-Sessions verteilt über die 2 Tage, reichen von Business-Themen bis hin zu technischen Deep Dives, wo Sie wirklich einsteigen können und sich informieren können. Mit diesen Tracks und Sessions können Sie Ihre individuelle Agenda zusammenstellen, basierend auf Ihren jeweiligen Interessen, aber natürlich auch basierend auf Ihrem aktuellen Erfahrungsschatz, weil ich denke, ein paar von Ihnen werden das erste Mal sich mit diesem Thema auseinandersetzen, ein paar sind schon AWS-Experten und vor diesem Hintergrund haben wir auch unterschiedliche Tiefen der Sessions gewählt. Damit Sie sich hier besser orientieren können für die nächsten 2 Tage, haben wir erneut eine AWS Summit App produziert. Hierin finden Sie Gebäude, Logistik, Pläne, wie Sie sich wo orientieren, also welcher Raum, welche Session. Und da können Sie natürlich auch Ihre eigene und individuelle Agenda entsprechend zusammenbauen. Ganz wichtig, wenn Sie weitere Fragen haben, wir haben einen relativ großen AWS-Bereich, wenn Sie rauskommen, gleich links. Da stehen Ihnen natürlich die AWS-Mitarbeiter für jedwede Fragen zur Verfügung. Sie können sie erkennen an diesem hübschen T-Shirt, was ich heute auch anhabe, aber auch an einem gelben Band für mit der Registrierungskarte. Also diese Menschen sind alle AWS, scheuen Sie sich nicht, diese entsprechend anzusprechen. Gut. Grundsätzlich finden Sie neben den eigentlichen Partnern auf dem AWS-Stand die verschiedenen Teams. Von Alexa bis hin zu den Startup-Kollegen. Insbesondere die Startup-Kollegen freuen sich auf ihren Besuch. Die haben 17 Startup-Unternehmen mit dabei, die ihre Lösungen präsentieren und auch natürlich auch spezielle Sessions zu häufig sehr innovativen und disruptiven Lösungen präsentieren. Wir haben das Trainingsteam hier. Für Sie eine Möglichkeit, sich über die Trainingsmöglichkeiten, die für uns aus unserer Sicht eben sehr wichtig sind, Skills zu erweitern, gleichzeitig aber auch Zertifizierung heute und morgen hier durchzuführen, wenn Sie das entsprechend wollen. Wir haben das Marketplace-Team vor Ort. Marketplace ist unser, nennen wir es mal, App Store. Das heißt, ein Weg, wie Sie als Unternehmen Ihr Einkauf standardisieren können über diesen Weg. Es gibt standardisierte Produkte und Lösungen, gleichzeitig aber auch ein Vertriebskanal mehr für die ISVs, die vielleicht heute auch interessiert sind, wie sie ihre Lösungen weiter vermarkten können. Nutzen Sie aber auch die Möglichkeit, mit der AWS User Group zu sprechen, aus erster Hand praktische Erfahrungen, praktische Beispiele, aber auch natürlich die Art und Weise, wie Sie mit AWS interagieren, kennenzulernen und vor diesem Hintergrund vertieft sich über technische Themen oder Lösungen auszutauschen. Wir sind auf Social Media erneut präsent. Wir würden uns freuen über Ihr Feedback, über die Art und Weise, wie Sie das Event empfunden haben. Sie dürfen sich gerne natürlich auch kritisch äußern. Wir freuen uns natürlich aber auch über entsprechend positive Kommentare. Und vor diesem Hintergrund einfach die Bitte, sehr aktiv dort zu sein. Bei AWS ist neues Lernen und Skills aufzubauen Teil unserer Kultur. Gleichzeitig sind wir der festen Überzeugung, dass insbesondere in der heutigen Zeit das ständige Lernen, das ständige sich weiterentwickeln ein essentielles, wichtiger Punkt sind, um zukünftig auch innerhalb der Unternehmen, aber auch für die private und persönliche Karriere relevant zu bleiben. In diesem Kontext haben Sie uns wahrscheinlich schon häufiger von den sogenannten Builders sprechen hören. Was sind Builders? Builders sind Menschen, die sich um neue Themen kümmern, Neues entstehen lassen, Bestehendes verbessern. Und genau eben diese Bilder, wie wir hier alle sitzen, Sie sind heute alle hier, Sie haben dieses Gen des Bilders. Aber genau diese Bilder wollen wir mit Veranstaltungen wie heute, mit dem Summit, wie Sie ihn heute hier erleben werden, unterstützen. Es ist eine Learning Opportunity für alle, die heute hier gekommen sind. Und daher wirklich werden wir zukünftig weiter investieren und unser Möglichstes tun, damit Sie zukünftig weiter eben genau solche Veranstaltungen besuchen können. Solche Veranstaltungen, wie Sie sich sicher vorstellen können, in diesem Umfang und Volumen sind nicht ganz günstig. Deswegen ist es ganz, ganz wichtig und ich freue mich daher besonders, dass wir relativ viele Sponsoren gewinnen konnten, die uns mit dieser Veranstaltung unterstützt haben. Fangen wir an mit unseren globalen Sponsoren, Intel und VMware, beides sehr strategische Partner für uns. Dann haben wir Goldsponsoren mit einer Platinum-Sponsoren mit dabei, eine Menge Goldsponsoren, die uns geholfen haben, diese Veranstaltung heute möglichst erfolgreich auszuführen. Bitte helfen Sie mir, diese Sponsoren einen entsprechenden Dank zu geben, indem wir einen kräftigen Applaus spenden, auch für unsere Silber-, Bronze- und Marketplace-Sponsoren. Gut, lassen Sie mich kurz ein paar Worte verlieren über den aktuellen Geschäftsverlauf von Amazon Web Services. Wie der eine oder andere vielleicht der Presse oder eben verschiedenen Analysten entnehmen konnte, wir bewegen uns sehr erfolgreich auf dem Markt. Wir haben in den 22 Milliarden Runrate produziert mit einem letzten Quartal von 5,4 Millionen und einem Wachstum von 49%. Diese 49% mit diesem Jahresumsatz ist natürlich nicht wenig. Das heißt, wir wachsen extremst stark auf hohem Niveau und das ist sicherlich ein Punkt, der innerhalb dieser Industrie zu erwähnen wäre. Wichtig auch, wir steigern. Das heißt, wir kommen von 42% Year-over-Year Wachstum auf 45% Year-over-Year auf 49% jetzt im letzten Quartal. Das heißt, wir sehen auch hier, dass innerhalb der Industrie hier ein Paradigmenwechsel stattfindet. Cloud is the new normal, haben Sie Andy Jassy vielleicht schon häufiger sagen hören. Das ist genau das, was aktuell passiert und das spiegelt sich natürlich auch in diesen Zahlen wider. Warum ist es so? Viele, viele Millionen Kunden sind bereits auf unserer Plattform und jeden Tag bekommen wir neue dazu. Hier in Deutschland haben wir mehrere 10.000 Kunden bereits schon seit einiger Zeit und wir erwarten, dass das sich natürlich insbesondere jetzt, wo das Thema mit Data Security, Compliance, werden wir heute noch und morgen noch ein bisschen mehr darüber hören, etwas sich verbessert hat und vereinfacht worden ist und die entsprechenden Features und Funktionalitäten innerhalb der Plattform verfügbar sind. Wir sehen da eine große Welle sozusagen über den deutschen Markt schwappen und freuen uns auf das, was die Zukunft bringt. Teil, warum das so ist neben den Produkten und Services sicherlich aber auch die Innovation. Wenn Sie sich anschauen, wie viele Services und Features wir in den letzten Jahren innerhalb eines Jahres produziert haben, sehen Sie an dieser Grafik, allein letztes Jahr waren es 1430 Features innerhalb eines Jahres. Wenn Sie das mal runterrechnen, das bedeutet ungefähr 3 Feature pro Tag. Das ist eine ganze Menge. Und das ist sicherlich auch ein Punkt, wo wir im Vergleich zu unseren Marktbegleitern unvergleichbar schnell sind. Hängt auch mit unserer Kultur und hängt sicherlich auch mit unserer Historie zusammen. Kunden mögen uns, die Innovation ist ein Teil davon. Wenn Sie sich mal anschauen, wie viele Kunden wir hier in Deutschland haben, es ist hier nur ein Auszug aus Deutschland, Österreich und der Schweiz. Viele, viele bekannte Brands, ein paar sind heute und morgen auch hier, werden hier auf der Bühne und in verschiedenen Sessions auch sprechen. Vielen Dank an dieser Stelle schon mal dafür. Ein paar herauszunehmen ist eine Otto, Retail Company, SAP, sehr bekannt, deutsche Software Company. Aber natürlich auch viele Industrieunternehmen wie eine Continental, eine Daimler oder Retail-Unternehmen, AdTech-Unternehmen wie eine Smarto. Sie finden über alle Industrien, alle Kundengrößen, finden Sie Lösungen, die innerhalb der AWS und mit der AWS entstanden ist. Wichtig in diesem Zusammenhang ist sicherlich und Teil dieses Erfolgs, seit 2014 sind wir bereits mit einer eigenen Region hier in Deutschland vertreten. Wir haben Vertrieb, Support, Trainings, Professional Services Teams in unseren Hauptstandorten in München und Berlin, sind auch in Frankfurt zwischenzeitlich vertreten und natürlich die gesamten Partner hier in Deutschland unterstützen Sie bei Ihren technischen Herausforderungen und mit den AWS-Lösungen. Weniger bekannt, deswegen würde ich das gerne heute an dieser Stelle auch nochmal erwähnen, wir haben auch hier in Deutschland Produktentwicklungsstandorte in Berlin und Dresden. Das heißt, hier entstehen wirklich Features und Services, die Sie später als Endkunde sozusagen Made in Germany nutzen können. Die Infrastruktur in Frankfurt, letztes Jahr zu dieser Zeit hatte ich das Vergnügen, die sogenannte dritte Availability Zone für Frankfurt zu announcen. Das sehr wichtig für besonders hochverfügbare Szenarien. Da ist natürlich wichtig, dass auch zukünftig wir weiter in diese Infrastrukturregion investieren und wir sind da auch weltweit sicherlich noch nicht fertig. Wir haben zurzeit 55 Availability Zones auf 18 Regions verteilt mit weiteren 4 Regions und 12 Availability Zones, die in den nächsten 9 Monaten, das heißt bis Anfang 2019, weltweit online gehen. Warum ist das so wichtig? Sie haben das Thema IoT, Edge Computing. Wir müssen nah an den Anwendungen sein. Da werden diese Infrastrukturen, Region-Themen zukünftig immer mehr eine Rolle spielen. In diesem Zusammenhang denke ich, ist auch noch zu erwähnen, dass wir entsprechende Direct Connect Locations an mehreren Standorten haben und sicherlich auch die verschiedenen Edge Locations, die über Deutschland verteilt sind. Wichtig für Sie sicherlich als Kunde und als Anwender der AWS, wir haben festgestellt, es ist auch sehr wichtig, dass wir mit unseren Mitarbeitern nah an unseren Kunden sind. Das heißt, wir planen über die nächsten Jahre auch weitere Standorte innerhalb Deutschlands zu eröffnen, um die Teams näher zu Ihnen als Endkunden zu bringen, um die Wege kurz zu halten und letztlich um die Zeit mit Ihnen zu maximieren. Sie haben mich eben über Bilder sprechen hören. Jetzt ist es für mich ein sehr, sehr großes Vergnügen und ich werde jetzt auf Englisch switchen. It's a great pleasure for me to welcome a colleague of mine. He was a builder himself. He was actually CTO of a company called Web Central. He was looking after highly scalable web platforms and big data systems for platformers. He did engineering development before, so he's a real builder type of person. But now, and since a couple of years, he joined AWS. Please welcome Glenn Gore, Chief Architect, AWS.
Klaus, thank you. Guten Morgen, Berlin. Wow, what a massive audience. So, let's get to the right slides here. So the theme every year for Keynotes changes. Those of you who've been coming to the summits for a while may remember we used to talk about data has gravity and that you can't fight gravity. And then cloud became the new normal. If you're building new applications, you do it on the cloud. And then last year we talked about superpowers, how when you use AWS services, they allow you to do amazing things that you just couldn't do using traditional techniques. And this year, the theme is really about build on. It's about builders. And actually what I really love about what's happening in the industry right now is that in this very room, every single one of you is a builder. It's not just the developers. It's not just the technical people who had the power to build. Business people, analysts, data scientists, operations staff who are now writing DevOps scripts and code to integrate and create incredibly dynamic environments on top of this software-defined infrastructure. You're all builders. And this is what's making it easier and easier. And the more people that can build, the more innovation occurs within the industry. And this is driving some of these massive mega trends that we see, whether it be from IoT and connected devices through to autonomous vehicles, to artificial intelligence and machine learning. All of this is being driven by you. And a lot of it's actually happening right here in Berlin. And we're going to touch on some of the local examples through the rest of the keynote. Now, if you kind of think back what it was like to be a builder just a few years ago, everyone hopefully recognizes the classic N-tier architecture. You had your browser, we had our web server, Apache, Tomcat as the application server, back-ended by a database. And you know what? Back then, we would stick logic in all three of those layers. We'd have a lot of logic in the presentation layer. We'd have Tomcat doing a lot more than it was really designed for, and we'd have business logic embedded within that database. And it caused all types of issues. Those of you that have been trying to migrate away from some of those decisions we made in the past, the paying off that technical debt, we've got scar tissue from it. And I'm as guilty of that as other people in making some of those decisions. It's really hard to do. But if you look at how the architecture has changed to what we call a 21st century architecture, this is one of our customers, iRobot. You might know them as the kind of the Roomba vacuum cleaner that goes around for those that are too lazy to vacuum their own floors. But what this diagram is showing you is kind of the registration of a new device and how it uses a completely serverless architecture to do each step of that process. And at first glance, it may actually look that this is more complex. There's more components being used in this simple registration process. But the power actually comes from the simplicity of every one of those single components. And so being able to make change within this is actually far easier. And being able to separate the different logic components out, where the business logic resides, the reusability of some of these components for other services. This is where the rise of microservices-based architectures really comes into it. And all of this is built on standard components and services provided by the AWS service framework. All these services done independently. I want to use SQS, simple queuing service, for message passing between those services, for example. API gateway, AWS Lambda for my compute functions, where I don't have to worry about the virtual machine, the operating system patching it. I just want to write my code and deploy it to the cloud and let AWS worry about whether I'm running that function once a day or 50,000 times a second. That's the power of serverless as you go through this. Now, if you're going to be writing these types of architectures, you've got to rethink the entire development cycle. Now, you think about development cycle, it's pretty simple, right? We write code, we check in that code, we build it, we build the package or the artifact that we're going to deploy, which we go put into a testing environment. We run a whole bunch of tests through it. Depending on those tests, we'll then deploy that to production. We may have A/B testing, blue-green deployments to test those functionality, and then it goes into operations. When I first started in the industry, the bulk of my time was spent writing code. Not a lot on the other steps. And over time, this has changed. You started to think about, well, what about patching as the software gets more complicated? Change management, especially when you start getting bigger and bigger development teams that may be actually working all around the world, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. The pace of change goes up. Not just deploying code once every 3 months in a maintenance window, pushing multiple changes per day. Actually, if you look at some of the best of breed, kind of born in the cloud companies, they are pushing multiple times per hour. That's a completely different way of thinking about the tool chain. You've got to think about, how do I wrap security around this when it's changing all the time? How do I get visibility and transparency as to what's happening in this environment? What about the tool chain itself? Every step of this process was often bolted together with completely different components, and just trying to get them to all talk together was complex and hard as well. And so we looked at this and thought, well, there's things we think we can do to help simplify this for builders. And the first step of this is AWS Cloud 9, which is the IDE, the integrated development environment that you can use, and allows you to program and write code directly within the web browser, and it's integrated to the AWS platform. Now, this is really important, for example, if you're trying to write Lambda functions, because you want to be able to write the code and deploy at the click of a button straight into Lambda, debug it within the IDE, see what happened, and then make changes. Now, as you do this, you may run into a little bit of trouble. You may be working on someone else's code, and so you can then collaborate with other developers and have them jump into the IDE and make changes with you. So you can see, you can do this collaborative development process. You can have a chat window open, so you can be saying, look, I don't understand what this function is doing. Your documentation wasn't quite up to scratch. What can we do to do this? And this is a really powerful feature of modern development practices. It's more than just a single developer working on their own as they go through with this. Well, what about the next part of the puzzle? If I'm writing the software, what about the set of services that allow me to deploy? This is where the CodeStar suite of products come into play, where, for example, you have Code Pipeline that can take your code from any code repository and push that through a deployment cycle into production using Code Deploy. You've got Code Build that can manage that build process for you, and Code Commit, which is just one of many different code repositories that you can store this in. And all of this is integrated into the greater AWS platform. Things like IAM for identity and access management control, CloudWatch, CloudTrail for changes. They're all integrated. So all these other services that you know and love are built into this development cycle. You don't need to work out how to integrate them on your own. And then we get to production and the ability to push it out. And again, as you push this into production, you get all of the power of the services of AWS coming to bear. Operations management, X-Ray, which is one of my favorite services, that ability in a microservice environment to actually follow every single transaction and see how it's passed from service to service to service, measure the latencies and the time, what happened, why did it pause, did it fail, where did it go? These are really simple things to do, but actually quite hard to do at scale. It's built in to AWS for you. And if you look now at how large the AWS portfolio of services is, it's 125 plus services. And all this is actually being driven by you. Our roadmap is driven by direct feedback from our customers. And so over the next 2 days, we get a lot of feedback from summits. And if you've been using the platform, any suggestions or things you'd like to see that the platform doesn't do, grab any of the AWS staff and have a conversation with us. We love hearing feedback from you, and this is what drives this continuous innovation as we go through this. I actually think these set of 125 plus services is the best toolkit you can have as a developer to write applications with and to operate production quality and scale for your organizations. But it's not just about the breadth of services. Now, I don't know how he picks the colors for some of these vendor comparisons. Some of you might be able to see there's a hidden meaning here. But it's also about the depth of services. Okay? If you look at, for example, just object and block key storage capabilities, AWS in orange, 65 choices you can make for this. Database engines, you can pick from 6. This is all about giving you flexibility. To be a builder, it's all about choice. You want to have the choice as to what is best for your organization, what is best for the skill sets within your organization. We're not going to dictate to you what you have to use. And so with that, to expand upon this in more detail and actually talk about a real example, FlixBus is a great company. They're a mobility provider that's changed the way over 100 million people have traveled since they first launched FlixBus brand back in 2013. So to talk about what they've been doing, it's my absolute pleasure to welcome Lars Schumahenko, the Principal DevOps Engineer for Flix Mobility, to the stage.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lars.
So, good morning, Berlin. My name is Lars Schumahenko, and I'm a Principal DevOps Engineer at FlixBus. And actually, my team and I were responsible to develop the solution I will show you in a bit. But first, let me give you an introduction to FlixBus. So, as Glenn said, we're a mobility provider. So, we already had more than 100 million customers. And last week, we launched our US business. So now our service is available in 28 countries. With around 1,700 buses on the street, we're one of the biggest bus fleets worldwide. But we do not own a single bus. So we're actually a technology company, and our bus partners are doing the transportation business. And now I want to show you a couple of challenges we've been facing within FlixTech, the IT organization of FlixBus. So first of all, we want to support further growth. At the moment, we have 30 engineering teams, and they need access to infrastructure, they need access to service. So we need an organizational setup so that the access to that doesn't become a blocker for them. On the other side, we also want to scale our organization. So we just started 2012, and we've been growing massively since then. So how can we actually stay agile? And of course, with all those cloud self-services, and the teams working in the cloud, we really want to make sure that we keep our infrastructure costs under control. So we really need some great cost transparency. What we did as a start into the cloud, we created just one AWS account and put all teams into this account. And they were starting using the services. However, this was not really scalable. So we lost some cost control, we lost transparency, and we also ended up with some questions like, hey, actually, who owns a specific EC2 instance? We just didn't know anymore. So we thought, OK, we need to rebuild that. And so we were using AWS Organizations to create a proper setup for us. So we started mirroring our real organizational structure. We're grouping the teams into business domains. And as of now, all the teams have 2 AWS accounts, one for the production services and another one for all the testing services. And additionally, putting IAM and service control policies on top, that really helped us to ensure the security and also the access for the teams to the services. With this AWS Organizations, we were also able to automate it from the beginning, because before that, you could not really automate account creation, and now we can do that. So we really invested time into doing that from the beginning, and that gave us really a speed improvement on creating new accounts, creating new regions. And to further improve the setup for our other teams moving into the cloud, we put Kubernetes and Kafka on top of the setup, so that it's really an easy start for the teams to do that. So what did we achieve so far? All the teams have access to the infrastructure they need. They have access to the services they need. They do not have to ask for permissions. They can just use it. So we have really happy engineers. And we can also just roll out new business features. We can test out new business ideas much, much, much faster. And we're also able to scale our infrastructure. So all the changes to our base setup, it's just a change in the configuration. There is no manual work anymore. So just to give you an example how it worked for us, for the US business, we launched the infrastructure in just 1 day, which was just not possible before. Before we took much, much longer, and that was a really great achievement. And we also achieved our cross-transparency we wanted to have. So with the organizational mirroring within AWS organizations, we can break down the cost to services. We can group them by business domains. So we can give everybody also in the business full transparency about the infrastructure costs they really use at the moment. So as a summary, we are currently quite happy with the setup. However, having now 60 AWS accounts, there are also a lot of new challenges. So for example, when we have applications running in different accounts, how can we really make sure that they have a proper communication between the applications? At the moment, we use peering, but we already know that there are limitations. So we're really looking into a next thing, which is AWS Private Link. We already tested it out, and it can really help us doing the cross-application, cross-account communication in the right way. And as we're already running a lot of Kubernetes clusters on AWS, we were, of course, really excited about EKS because that will allow us to put less effort into the infrastructure and focus more on product delivery. And as it's generally available since yesterday, we're really looking forward to test it out very soon. So that's it from my side. If you haven't tried out FlixBus yet, download the app, and probably you book your next trip with us. Thank you for the attention, and enjoy the remaining summit. See ya.
Thanks, Lars.
Thank you.
Great company building great software right here in Berlin. So if you think about what's one of the biggest changes that's happening within the industry, it's machine learning and artificial intelligence. Now, we talked about this a little bit last year, but it's just amazing to me how quickly this area is evolving. And it's actually still accelerating the evolving rate of the simplicity, but also at the same time some of the amazing things you can do with this technology. And as much as I'd love to talk about this myself, there's actually someone who's far more competent in this area, who's actually based right here out of Berlin. You might have remembered him from last year. We had Ralf Herbrick on stage here, but Ralph's the managing director of the Amazon Development Center in Germany, which focuses on AI and ML, and he gets to work on all types of really interesting and exciting projects within Amazon, and he's going to share with us just some of the history and where this is evolving to. So with that, it's my absolute pleasure to welcome Ralf to the stage. Thanks, Ralf.
Thank you, Glenn. Thanks a lot, Glenn, and guten Morgen. Willkommen zum AWS Summit. Gerade mal eine Woche vor der Fußball-WM, bei der Vorhersagen auch eine wichtige Rolle spielen werden. And with that, as Glenn said, I do want to start this session with a bit of history on machine learning, both in academia, where I've been spending 25 years, and at Amazon. And one of the interesting things is that as an academic field, machine learning is really young. It's just 25 years old. It's just 50 years old. And 50 years isn't very long in academia. And even more interesting is that judging how popular it is today and how much aspects of everyday's life it is affecting, for the first 40 years of its existence, the field was more of a stepchild. And if you studied machine learning back in the mid-90s, when I started, it was a very small crowd that had the passion, that foresaw a world that we have today, where machine learning is used when you leave the house, when you go at work, when you come back, everywhere, the whole time. And as a result, the set of domain experts in this field is really small, people that have decades of experience. But the importance of machine learning is very high. And we observed this and we noticed this in Amazon early on. And the way we solved this is we couldn't accelerate time, but we took the science and we decided we want to codify. We want to put the insights from the scientific field into the algorithms, into code, into libraries and services that could be reused. And we did that for some of the applications that are more prominent, that many of you have seen. So, for example, many in the audience have probably used Amazon to shop and have seen people who bought this also bought that. That's an application of machine learning. In fact, one where we helped set and define the field. Another one that many of you've tried or even possess is our speech recognition in Alexa. So the detection of speech, the generation of speech, the extractions of facts from the web, and then the answering of questions, that's machine learning at work. Or the Amazon Go store, where we make it possible to go shop and have no checkout. That's an application of computer vision and machine learning. Or soon our delivery with Prime Air, that's an application where you see machine learning in action. But if you look below the surface, you see there's hundreds of applications where we use machine learning, where we use libraries and of basic building blocks to allow our retail customers to have better inventory management and lower prices, because we predict the demand of fashion, of books, of kitchenware, of consumables every single day in order to stock right. Or where we take our catalog and we fill the quality of the data in the catalog in automatically and help our vendors to have more accurate entries of their products. Or we help our sellers, over our 2 million sellers, both the prevention of fraud and the and help if they look for help with the products they sell and with their customers. Or we help people, our content creators, in re-indexing books and US customers experience as X-ray. And these are applications of machine learning and the building blocks of the science codified in libraries and services that it doesn't meet the eye directly, but they're very impactful. And we've learned many lessons of what those building blocks are. In fact, what we've seen is, and if you make these building blocks available, many employees, not just a scientist, not just the engineers, we have analysts who automatically build models with the tools we have to clean and to curate the catalog of sellers in a particular region, or that generated models for leads generation in the sales. And there's 3 lessons we've learned as Amazon over the last 20 years that are necessary for machine learning to really root and sustain and generate business value in application. So the first lesson that we've learned is that data keeps increasing. So any codification, any implementation of machine learning primitives, whether it's time series, classification, it's parameter optimization, it's image recognition, it has to scale to an ever-growing amount of data. So the notion of cloud scale in data as well as in compute is important. The second thing we've learned is it has to be extensible. So people started inventing algorithms in the 80s, but even today, every month, our scientists and our engineers invent new algorithms. So any framework that we have needs to have the ability that's extensible. There's no fixed and finite and closed set of algorithms that really solve the problems in everyday life. And the last one, and that's probably one of the most important ones, we've learned that it has to become accessible not to this small set of experts who had who foresaw some future 25 years ago. It has to be accessible to the scientists that have used it for decades, to the developers that used it for the last decade, but then also to analysts and every employee in the company. And this accessibility is really what unlocked the value for us at Amazon of machine learning as a science. And in order to talk about how to realize that for you with infinite data, I want to bring back Glenn to stage.
Awesome. Thank you, Ralph. So, Ralph, we had you a year ago on stage.
Thank you.
I'm kind of curious, what do you see as being the biggest change in the last year for you in the world of machine learning?
Yeah, so one of the things that people often feel is machine learning is a bit of a magic dust. You sparkle on top of your application and it unlocks value. But the reality is that machine learning extracts the magic dust out of data. And data keeps increasing in complexity and in size because of the Internet of Things and sensors that are available at all company sizes today. So both the amount of data and the quality of that become one of the most important drivers of making the value of machine learning actually work. And that's the increase of that has actually been one of the biggest changes in the last 12 months.
And you think that volume of data is going to keep getting bigger and bigger as
It does
computer vision becomes more
people invent
common.
more and more sensors.
Excellent. Well, Ralph, thank you very much for joining us again.
Thank you.
So, it's great to have like I said, Berlin is leading the way with this. There's a lot of AI ML experts coming out of Berlin, which is fantastic to see. So you think about infinite data. Really, it's never been easier or cheaper to collect and store data. In some ways, there's no excuse not to store something as long as you're fitting within compliance and regulatory needs that you have within your organizations. But this is the key to starting with machine learning, is having this data on tap. And there's a couple of ways to do this. One is you have new data, which is pretty easy, right? It's coming from new applications that have already been deployed in the clouds. So the obvious place to store that is in things like S3, for example, or in databases. But what about your existing data? How do we migrate that to the cloud? You can use things like Snowball, you can use Direct Connect, you can even use, in the US, for example, Snowmobile, which is a big semi-trailer full of storage. You just park outside your data center and it vacuums up the data and moves it to a region. But as this moves across, the next step is, well, what are the algorithms I want to apply to my data that's going to generate the models that I then use to get the insights into what questions I'm trying to ask of this data, whether it be fraud management, prediction models, image classification, natural language processing. It all is based on these kind of three common building blocks. The data may be training data, in the case of natural language processing, for example. Or it could be real-time transactional data going through a retail e-commerce provider looking at, for example, buying behavior and sales prediction models. Doesn't matter what it is, batch, real-time, they all follow this kind of data algorithm model approach. And as you have that model, you feed new data into that model, which allows you, for example, to have a prediction. And often that model is actually creating new data itself, which then feeds back into this cycle. And this is why you see this explosion in infinite data when you start using some of these models. So what's our goal behind the investments we're making in machine learning at Amazon Web Services? It really comes down to this simple statement, this vision we have that we want to put machine learning in the hands of every developer and data scientist, not just the hands of a few. Because to be a data scientist or a machine learning engineer is really complex. You need to have kind of three different sets of attributes. You need to be a developer. You need to have business skills so you can understand what the business is trying to do and apply those development and technical skills to solving business problems. And then third, you need another set of attributes, which is kind of the statistics, the maths, the data science part. Now, it's hard to find a good developer that's also got good business skills, to be honest. Finding people that have all three sets of attributes is very rare. So what can we do to simplify this down? And the way we think about it is we kind of think of it as layers that we can do. And at the base of this platform of AI is the foundational services. This is for those of you who are extremely comfortable working with machine learning frameworks. This is where, for example, you're going to be hands-on with things like TensorFlow, MXNet. You're going to be writing code. And the next layer up is the platform layer. This is where Amazon SageMaker fits in, for example. This is for example, data scientists who don't want to know about what's happening at the infrastructure layer. They just want to look at what the Jupyter Notebooks is, what the data is, the models, tune those models, and play around and see what's happening with the accuracy rating. And at the top of the stack, you have application services. This is for people who just want to consume the benefits of machine learning through an API. I don't want to do any training at all. I don't even want to understand the model. I just want to take my library of images, feed it into something like, for example, recognition, and pull metadata out. Does it contain a face? Show me all faces that were smiling, with glasses, happy. I don't want to know about the heavy lifting that was actually happening behind the scenes with this. So it gives you a great choice of flexibility in putting the capabilities of machine learning, whether you know how to use machine learning or not. So let's just dive into these a little bit more. So if you look at that foundational layer, Again, we're not going to lock you into a particular framework. You have complete choice around the frameworks you have. We actually have a machine learning purpose-built AMI machine image that runs in EC2 that actually has a lot of this already pre-installed, ready to go, has the Intel math library embedded in the kernel, which gives some amazing performance improvements. And when you combine that with the infrastructure that exists within EC2, for example, the P3 instances, where they've got the NVIDIA chipsets, you can get up to a petaflop of compute power per instance, which is an amazing amount of capacity to go through with this, which is really good if you're wanting to do training at speed, for example, bang for buck. There's a lot of really fun technology built into these instances. But different models and different algorithms, some of them run better on CPUs, GPUs. So having this choice of flexibility to customize what is the best bang for buck for each of these frameworks and models, that's your choice. And this is where you have a lot of fun experimenting as you go through with this. But then when you think about, well, what are the steps you need to do at a machine learning layer, where do you spend your time? First of all, I've got to kind of build the model, build the data. I then have to train it. And then I need to deploy it. They're kind of the three major steps you go through. And this is what SageMaker does for you. It allows you to focus on those three steps without having to understand the underlying platform underneath that. Okay, it actually comes with 12 different algorithms that you can apply. You can build this. It uses Juniper notebooks that are pre-built for common problems. So it allows you to get started really easily. If you're looking to get started with machine learning, but you've been a little bit it's almost a bit daunting sometimes just looking at it, this is a good place to start, is SageMaker. It exposes enough of the complexity of machine learning, but simplifies it in a way that's nice and easy for you to get through. And there's some great examples and tutorials online that you can go through. Once you pick the algorithm that you want to apply, I can then do one-click training, and I can also optimize the algorithm through parameter-based tuning. And there's a lot of, gives you a lot of control over each of those separate models that you're doing. And then when I'm ready and I have the data coming out of my model training saying this is successful, it's giving me the insights that I'm looking for, I can then push that through to production. I can fully manage that with all the benefits we expect from, example, infrastructure hosting, where I get that auto-scalable features, so I'm only paying for what I use as that use case goes up and down. SageMaker does all of that for you out of the box. And so how might you use something like SageMaker? So for example, you might want to take image data and use convolutional neural network algorithm like ResNet and build your own custom machine learning model to identify cars, for example, or buildings out of photos. And these are real use cases that customers are using today. They're looking for particular objects out of images and applying that. Or you may want to use k-means clustering, for example, to create a new model to predict sales activity every time you release a new product. Or you may want to take purchase data in real time and use a logistic regression algorithm to do fraud risk analysis on new purchases. Is this actually a proper purchase, or is it fraudulent behavior? And SageMaker has these different models built into it that allow you to experiment with which one is going to be the right model for you to use in your organization. This is where a lot of that testing goes through. And they're all optimized with SageMaker, so you don't have to do a lot of that work with you. So you can see here SageMaker goes from collect and preparing your training data all the way through to scaling and managing the production environment, all the steps in between. So a very easy place to get started. Customers are using this all over the world, but eRento is based here in Germany, which is an online rental marketplace. And what I like is they're using SageMaker, and by using SageMaker, they kind of built their recommendation system out of SageMaker. And it took the building time for them to build their recommendations engine from an anticipated 6 months down to just a few weeks. And it allowed the algorithm training time, which was taking them hours and hours to process that data, down to mere seconds. Also, we removed the dependency across projects and simplified the platform down, which has streamlined the whole pre-deployment process for them. So a great local example, again, of how SageMaker is being used by customers. All right, so we've looked at lower-level services for data scientists, for machine learning engineers. But at the top of the stack, we have the application services. And this is where you can look at things like recognition, natural language processing, translation service, comprehension, transcribe. You can do text to voice, voice to text if you're creating chatbots through Lex and Poly. All of this you can consume via a simple API, and we're doing the heavy lifting for you behind the scenes around the actual training and the models being used. And the great thing about these services is that as these are used by customers all around the world, and these systems are continuously learning, you get the benefits of higher accuracy and new features coming in without having to do anything at all. And that's one of the greatest benefits of the application services. And you can see customers all around the world are using the AWS services to build their AI platforms. From Wooshka, who does some really interesting things around creating custom podcasts for customers where they take printed media from newspapers and traditional media companies and take individual user patterns and create an individualized podcast where they take the text and read it out as a voice podcast for you per day. Something that would be very expensive and time-consuming to do if we had humans reading out everyone's individual podcast. Here's an example of how you can use this technology. So this is driving innovation that just wasn't possible. And I think we're just at the start of actually what is truly possible from these technologies. There's so much great experimentation going on. So this is the full stack. There's lots of actually experts here today around AI, ML. We had an event last night with startups and enterprises, and it was amazing to me just how many of the startups were actually on this field of AI and ML and the application of it with other organizations. So now what? I'm going to start with SageMaker. Another area to look at is Deep Lens. It's actually the world's first machine learning-enabled camera from AWS. And what this is great is one of the biggest themes, I think, in the world of machine learning is actually computer vision. I see customers from, for example, mining companies at mining sites through to retail organizations looking at how people interact with merchandise in stores, to theme parks looking at how people queue and are their emotions happy to be queuing or are they starting getting annoyed. All that is being driven by computer vision. And Deep Lens is a really nice package solution that allows you to very simply get started with a camera and applying models to pick up individual detection of objects that you can customize through SageMaker and see what you can do with it. It's a great starting point. And then we also have the Amazon Machine Learning Solutions Lab, which if you go online and do a search for, it's kind of, we have a team of dedicated specialists that can come in and run custom workshops with your organization. As you look at this and you think, okay, actually I want to dive into this a lot more detail, how do I use the data and the models in the best way for my organization? They can come in, they can work with you for weeks, months to work through that entire process. There's a ton of information on this. I really recommend if you want to deep dive into this, go to aws.amazon.com/ml. There's labs, there's tutorials, there's a lot of extra information, there's videos, customer testimonials. There's a wealth of information out there. There'll also be the AWS stand, there'll be experts there as well you can have conversations with. All right, so that's machine learning. You also want to be able to build insights with data and analytics. And why is this so important? Actually, a lot of data still resides in structured databases. And a lot of them are proprietary, that you're being locked in and paying pretty high costs. And customers, as they move to AWS, they want to get off these proprietary databases onto a more open database engine. And so the first step we had to try and solve for this was a database migration tool, DMS, database migration service. It's been used over 73,000 unique databases to migrate across. It'll help you with your schema move, for example, the ability to shift data from on-premises to the cloud, back again if it doesn't work. It's got a lot of things built into that if you're looking to do database migration. A lot of customers, when they're migrating, are using Amazon Aurora, which is our fastest growing AWS service ever, beating Redshift, which is the previous winner there. It's compatible with MySQL or Postgres, so if you're already using those database engines, you don't need to make any changes to your code. It's several times faster. It's kind of built for the cloud natively, so it's got redundancy built in. It's highly available and durable across the availability zones, and it's 1/10 the cost of a commercial database. This is why Aurora is of huge importance to customers that are still using databases in a structured manner. It's being used by customers everywhere. Munich-based Team Internet, for example, leader in traffic monetization domain services, they use Aurora for MySQL to power their real-time bidding platform, Tonic, which processes more than 500 gig of raw data each day and stores 23 terabytes of aggregated ad buying statistics in a single cluster. Now you think about what the cost would have been to do this in a traditional database. It's really high. Since they migrated to Aurora, they've seen a 3 times improvement in performance, and at the same time we're able to simplify the extract, transform, and load, or ETL aspects within their organization. So the benefits of Aurora are massive. And again, we only expect the amount of data we have to deal with to grow exponentially. We've also heard, though, that with databases, unpredictable workloads are still challenging. Databases, you still kind of size for that maximum worst case and leave it there, because changing it on the fly is really hard. But what if we had a way of solving this? And this is where we introduce Amazon Aurora Serverless so that you can get the benefits of serverless aspects to deal with these unpredictable workloads. And this is really great, for example, in if you're a gaming company, for example, they have massive differences in behavior, HR applications depending on different times of the year, end of the tax year, or performance review time. They can go through massive spikes as organizations have very heavy usage of that. Use Aurora Serverless. It's available in preview if you want to know more. Come see the AWS staff and they'll work you through this. If you have incredibly latency sensitive workloads, stay with traditional Aurora for the moment. That's kind of how they sit there. Serverless is really good for those spiky demands, but if you've got a trading platform, for example, traditional Aurora is what you should be using there. We continue to innovate as well on some of the database technologies that have been around for quite a while. DynamoDB, our NoSQL-based database that's highly scalable. One of the feedback we had from customers was, how do we back this up? And so being able to have point-in-time recovery and the ability to take an entire snapshot of my DynamoDB database, even if it's multiple terabytes in size, without impacting performance. And that's what DynamoDB Backup does. And this was only a couple of weeks ago, went GA, and is available in the Frankfurt region as well right here. So again, allows you to have better control and protection around the different database choices that are available to you. What about your data lake? This is probably one of the biggest questions when I talk to particularly enterprise CIOs, is all about, how do I manage my data lake? Now, it should be no surprise that Amazon S3 is the most popular choice. It's kind of infinitely scalable, highly durable with 11 nines of durability. You've got a fine-grained control through IAM around who can access what objects, even by time of day. You've got lifecycle management policies built into it. You have a lot of flexibility built around it. But when I look at how customers look at and use their data, the unfortunate reality is that they actually spend 20% of their time on the analytics stage. And 80% of their time is spent managing the data lake, managing the analytics environment, managing the security posture. This is just kind of a list of some of the things you have to think about in the complex world of data architecture. How am I doing my ingestion? How do I manage governance, security, and privacy? Actually, tomorrow's keynote with Mark Ryland, who's an incredibly smart guy, he's going to delve into this a little bit more detail around some things you need to think about when it comes to governance, security, and some of the innovations that we've built into the platform to make this easier for you. How do I manage data quality, analytics? How do I capture data change? This becomes even more important with things like GDPR now out here. It's been fascinating to me watching this over the last couple of weeks, how many emails I've got from companies I never knew had access to my data. And I'm sitting there going, unsubscribe, unsubscribe. Best thing ever. Love GDPR. And so the reality is, most of your data's in silos as a result. In your organization, it's kind of locked up in this system, and I have another system over here. And people naively think that the data lake is something that's just going to magically break down these silos. Well, it's not. Okay, unless you actually put the effort in and the design work in to break those silos down. So what does a modern data architecture actually look like? Well, the first step is I want automated ingestion. I want to be able to collect that data as easily as possible and store it in a central location. For example, it could be using Kinesis for that real-time streaming capture of data and stream that straight into S3. I may even use a bit of Lambda to do some quality checking as it's coming in to make sure, for example, it's scrubbed of privacy data. DynamoDB streams, another example of this. I also want to preserve the original source data, because it may be stored in databases, may be stored in Redshift in a data warehouse. It could be in EFS, which is NFS-style file system, RDS, relational database services. There's not one size fits all here. There are lots of different choices for you to have. And as you start storing large amounts of information, there's still more innovation we can do. For example, S3 Select, storing log files. Now, it wasn't too long ago that if you stored large amounts of log files and you wanted to find particular elements of it, customers were firing up big Hadoop clusters on EMR, doing batch processing, pulling data out. It was a pretty heavy lifting way. Or I can do S3 Select and actually query those log files as if it was a structured data form. Vastly simplifies things, reduces the time to get answer back, and most importantly, reduces your cost. And you can also do this across Glacier as well, which is a kind of offline storage option as well. So again, making it easier for you to work with vast amounts of data. But you have to be able to manage the governance, security, and privacy. AWS Config, for example, which allows you to track the configuration of that data environment. CloudTrail, which will track every change that's made to the systems around that. So you can generate alerts saying if something was changed, it's something, change a policy around this. For example, KMS, the key management service around encryption keys, incredibly important. As you start using encryption keys per application, rolling keys hour by hour, sometimes even file by file. You start managing tens of thousands of encryption keys. KMS simplifies that down for you. And you have Vault Lock as well for Glacier to protect your data. But if I've got all these different data sources, how do I connect these different systems with the analytics systems? Because again, if you're going to have choice of storage, you're going to have choice of analytics platforms as well. And this is where AWS Glue comes in, which is the ability to take the extract, transform, and load capabilities and join those two together for you, and actually builds metadata as it learns about these environments, which makes it easier for you to apply machine learning, which we talked about earlier. And the great thing about Glue is it can also work with your on-premises databases. Your data doesn't have to be in AWS as well. So Glue can be a really good starting point as you start looking at what data you have on-premises and building some of those analytical platforms within AWS as a bridging capability. And so with these set of capabilities, it's the only place you can have a comprehensive modern data architecture. Deep integration of security and governance, the removal of that heavy lifting of managing the analytics platforms themselves. Because they're all integrated and they work to each other, they know how to talk, and it's easy to configure. And if you get this right, you can shift the balance. Instead of spending 80% of your time managing and 20% on analytics, you can flip it the other way around. 80% of your time on analytics and 20% on the prep. And this is where magic happens when you can do this. The optimization efficiency of the teams working with this data is multiplied significantly. And so to talk a little bit more about AI, ML, data analytics, data lakes, and all the fun things we've just been talking about, OLX Group, it's a massive organization, but to talk through what they've been doing, we have Olaf Zistrick, who's the Chief Technology Officer from OLX Group, who's going to talk about their journey with AWS. Olaf.
Thanks, Glenn. Thanks,
Awesome.
Glenn.
Thank you.
This is awesome. Thanks for having me. Hello, everybody. It's a great pleasure and honor to be here. My name is Olaf, and as you may can guess by my accent, I'm German. But I'm not only German, I'm also born Berliner, which makes it even more special for me to be here today. So welcome all to my hometown. I'm the CTO of the OLX Group. Some people refer to us as the biggest internet company you have never heard of. So let me start with telling you who we are and what we do. The OLX Group is part of Naspers. Naspers is a South African-based internet and entertainment group with a market cap of more than 100 billion. It was founded in 1915. It's also one of the largest technology investors in the world, including companies like Tencent, the Chinese internet giant, or Delivery Hero from Berlin, just to name two. Naspers heavily invests into areas like fintech, e-commerce, video entertainment, health, education, travel, food delivery, and classifieds. And this is what we do. The OLX Group is Naspers' classified segment. In simple words, we enable our users to pretty much buy and sell anything within their local communities. We do facilitate more transactions than any classifieds player on earth. Our mission is to make trading of used goods as simple, as convenient, as safe, and as much fun as possible, driven by smart product and technology solutions. We run a portfolio of brands and platforms. Our main brands are OLX in emerging markets, letgo in the US and Turkey, and Avito, one of the largest internet companies in Russia. In addition, we have a couple of vertical brands, including cars, real estate, but also things like fashion, services, or even heavy machinery. The latest addition to our group had been the Frontier Car Group from Berlin, where we just announced an investment and partnership. Let's look at a few numbers. As you can see, we are indeed not small. We operate globally and are currently active in 43 countries, serving 350 million unique users every month. We do have 35 offices and employ more than 5,000 people. 1,000 work in product development and engineering. We have a couple of development hubs around the globe, including cities like Moscow, Barcelona, Buenos Aires, Delhi, Lisbon, Poznan, and Berlin, where we are building out a larger development hub. 3 years back, we embarked on the journey to move all our applications into the cloud. I'm happy to say that we are finishing our AWS migration as we speak, so we are going to shut down our last data center late summer this year. But the story I want to share with you today is not yet another bare metal to cloud migration story. Instead, I want to talk about data and how AWS has helped us to get our data management in order. Any successful internet company these days is built on top of data, as data is driving insights and product innovation. So the ultimate goal is to power everybody in the company with data and give each and everyone access to exactly the data that he or she needs. This is not an easy task, and it has not become easier with GDPR in place. So what have we done to solve that? If you think of data, you can break down the problem into 4 main areas. First, data collection and storing of data. Second is what we call data democratization. It's about providing easy and self-service access in a secure and compliant manner. Third is more traditional BI and reporting. And last but not least, the fancy stuff. It's about data products and product innovation with the help of artificial intelligence and machine learning. So let's take a brief look at each of the 4 areas. At the heart of our foundation sits AWS S3. We use it as a central data lake. We currently store around 400 terabytes of compressed data in S3. On top of that, we have developed 2 in-house solutions. The first one we call Hydra. It allows us to track user behavior and stream those events into S3. Currently, we capture around 4 billion events per day or 40,000 events per second. The second technology we call LiveSync. It allows us to replicate data from all our transactional platform databases in near real time. Once the data is in a central place, you can tackle the problem of data democratization. For security and compliance reasons, it's simply not an option to grant access to everyone. So we have closed the data lake completely. Still, you want to make sure that data is available to everybody within minutes and just a few clicks. For that, we have developed a tool that we call the Data Catalog. The Data Catalog allows users to request access to data, to any data source that we have in the data lake. To do so, users have to specify a reason, so what they are intending to do with the data, as well as things like the retention policy. All our data in the lake is classified, so we also know whether the requested data contains any private sensitive information. In case it does, we either anonymize those fields, or in case access is needed, there's an additional approval step via our DPO. To process the classification data, we use AWS Glue. If all is fine, we simply pump the data into a dedicated data reservoir, also in S3. To pump the data, we use AWS EMR. The data is made available in either JSON format or as Puppet files. Once the data is available, you can start making use of the data. For BI and reporting, our stack is pretty straightforward. So we do use AWS Redshift as our data warehouse and Tableau for visualization and reporting. We run several instances of that stack, both for global as well as local teams. Having such an architecture has helped us to solve a couple of super crucial problems. For example, we are now able to provide consistent and streamlined reporting of all our main business KPIs across platforms. In addition, local analysts can much more focus on in-depth analytics supporting their local business. All of that is done on top of the same data. In case analysts need access to raw data, they can also simply crunch the reservoir directly with the help of AWS Athena and also visualize that with Tableau. The last area is probably the most exciting. As you all know, there had recently been a huge hype around AI and ML. But there's also no doubt that this is changing the way we're going to build applications in the future. Any application on Earth will sooner or later be an intelligent application providing highly personalized service to its users. Underlying technologies like MXNet or TensorFlow are becoming commodity, which means that speed of innovation will only accelerate. But talent is scarce, so you want to lower the entry barrier as much as possible and enable easy experimentation for any engineer in the organization, not just data scientists. For that, we are working on a default pipeline based on AWS SageMaker, allowing us to do model training, feature engineering, and serving of models at scale. We already have a pretty cool set of applications, so we do use ML for image recognition and classification, for fraud prevention, for content moderation, for our recommender systems, or search ranking. Moving forward, we will heavily invest in that field, so stay tuned. This is what I wanted to share with you today. Please follow us on Twitter under OLX Tech Berlin. Soon after my talk, we're going to post a question, and if you know the answer, you can win an iPad. Also, if you are interested in the details, do not miss our session tomorrow at 4 p.m. in Room Apollo. Let me end by saying thanks to our friends and partners in AWS. It had been a remarkable journey, and yeah, the team had really been of tremendous help and support. Thanks a lot. Enjoy the rest of the show. Bye.
Well, thank you. Thank you. Incredible. I just love the way Olaf casually throws out stats. It wasn't too long ago that we were all really proud if you had 1 billion rows in a database. Now it's kind of billion events a day, trillions in total. It's just a peak of what that future scale is going to be. So let's talk about compute, because compute is still under so much innovation as it goes through. And actually, when you think about compute, it's now this kind of shift from virtual machines through to containers and serverless. Now, it's not a case of one size fits all. Okay, it's about what combination of these 3 different philosophies of doing compute in terms of how you want to apply them to the different workloads within your organization. Virtual machines, it eliminates that physical infrastructure. It's great for, for example, if you're doing lift and shift from existing applications to AWS, and you've got a large existing footprint. It's also really well understood. There's a lot of skills around managing VMs. It's really easy and safe. And if you look at the range of compute instances we have everything from small instances for test and dev all the way up to X1 instances, which have incredible amounts of memory if you're running SAP workloads, for example, the P3 instances for those AI and machine learning, all the way to F1, which is field programmable gate arrays, FPGA tech for things like running Monte Carlo simulations, for example. And actually just in the last 24, 48 hours, we announced even more changes to the lineup with the M5D and C5D that give you even faster access to storage through some of the innovations that we continue to push through the bare metal hypervisors that we're working on. So having that choice is really important to give you the best optimization, reduce your costs. And then you have containers, which are even more, brings more efficiencies with faster startup and tear down for your services. And as you start getting to microservices, it allows you to kind of stack more things onto that underlying infrastructure and really empowers developers to have more control. And you look at ECS, which is kind of based on Docker. It's a fully managed platform that you can use through cluster management and orchestration. It has a catalog assigned to it, has lots of benefits out of the box that allows you just to get on with the task of deploying your containers on top of ECS. And we have, again, customers all around the world using this, including here locally, My Taxi, where they use Docker containers to build some of their services, particularly where they have to deal with like a 350% increase or spike in taxi demand during holidays. Containers allow them to very quickly respond to that, particularly when you kind of think 10 million users over 45,000 taxis in 40 cities. That gets pretty complex to manage at scale, but containers allow them to simplify that down. But one of the biggest questions we kept having was, what about Kubernetes? I don't know what it is about Germany, but you guys are really big Kubernetes fans here as well. And so you may have been excited to see that actually just last night, it was about 8 p.m. local time, we announced that EKS has gone generally available. And so you can now get access to EKS to run Kubernetes workloads and all the things that you expect around being able to have a managed and consistent experience that's integrated to the AWS services, the ones that we've been talking about, CloudWatch, CloudTrail. What I really like as well is it's certified Kubernetes. So you know that it's going to be compliant and supported for your Kubernetes stacks. And it's built with the OSS community around this. Again, open standards are important when it comes to this. We talked about builders. Builders want to build. We don't want to manage clusters. We don't want to get lost in admin. The more we can hand off that management, it frees us up to do more development and building. And so AWS Fargate is what can we do to remove that underlying infrastructure and cluster management from containerization? What if we said there's no infrastructure for you to manage, you manage everything at that higher level container level, you can launch easily, scale quickly, and you have resource-based pricing. Again, it's this drive to simplify the platform for you. This is what Fargate does. And Fargate's available with ECS, which is for Docker. So you can have choice of Docker or Kubernetes. And AWS Fargate for EKS will be coming out soon as well to bring some of those benefits to the Kubernetes family. And then the third model is serverless, which is where you get the most highest developer productivity and complete elimination of infrastructure. You don't even have to worry about an operating system. There's no patching, for example. That's all done behind the scenes by AWS. It allows you to focus really on the business logic of what that Lambda function is going to be doing for you. And if you actually look across the AWS services, a lot of them are already serverless. You might not have even realized they are. SQS, for example, the IoT platform is all built on serverless components. API gateway, there's no service for you to manage. The application load balancer, Cognito, just to give you some examples. All of these are great real-world examples at massive scale who are all built using serverless approaches and that a lot of you are already using today. And so being able to bring these into your own architectural designs is really key. Like I said, they're going to integrate across all three of those, whether it be the VMs, containers, or serverless. They all have their own strengths and weaknesses as you go through with this. But the benefit of serverless is there's no server management at all. You get flexible scaling, high availability, and the most important one for me is there's no idle capacity. If it's not being used, you don't pay a cent. So if you've got a function that only gets called once a week, you only get charged when that function was called. You're not having to pay for a server to sit around idle just to service that query. And that's really the flexibility and the benefit that serverless brings to you. And again, there's customers running this all over the world. Again, some local examples for you. Pesla uses microservices and hundreds of AWS Lambda functions that they continuously test and deliver updates 40 times a day. And this is the thing with Lambda, you're kind of shrinking your application services down into smaller components, and smaller components are easier to change and to test because they only do a very simple thing. But together, when you chain them together, they can do some amazingly complex things. Or Burda Studios, for example, which uses Lambda to deliver contents to its customers 75% faster than before, which in their business is really important because they're all about delivering breaking news to their customers as quickly as they possibly can. And so Lambda gives them a competitive advantage in doing that, as an example. And so as you look at this spectrum, whether it be from virtual machines to serverless, even if you're migrating through this over time, you might start with the virtual machines because that's what you're used to, and you move towards containerization, and then to serverless, we have you covered. And by the way, for those of you in the audience, one of the surprising things we've noticed is that serverless, while being really new, it's not just being used by startups. Enterprises are making heavy use of serverless as well because they're actually leapfrogging from virtual machines straight to serverless wherever they can because they see the benefits within their organizations, particularly at scale, and where they've got hundreds, sometimes even thousands upon thousands of individual applications. Some of them don't get used all that lot. Perfect use cases of where they can use serverless to reduce their costs with that. And so, to expand upon what it looks like in a connected world, using all these services together, a worldwide brand, BMW, very lucky to have Dr. Alex Lenk here, who's going to talk about the connected car cloud hubs that he's and his team are building all around the world. So to share with us his story, let's welcome Alex to the stage. Thanks, Alex.
Thanks. Yeah, thank you for having me. My name is Alex. I'm working with BMW, and I'm responsible for the connected car cloud hubs there. You all know BMW, but maybe, or I hope you all know BMW, but to get you a little bit more information about our IT and especially our connected car IT, I brought some numbers. So we have a product called Connected Drive. This is something you can purchase when you're buying your car, and this has been out there for 16 years. Since we're dealing with cars, not with other devices, we give quite a bit of support on there. So more than 10 years, we're actually having cars on the system that have been there from the beginning, so 16 years old. We have at the moment 11 million cars with SIM cards in them that can connect to our backend. Or as I like to see them, very cool IoT devices. So there's worse things than having an M5 that is connected to your backend and you have to deal with it. At the moment, we're dealing with them in 3 different data centers, or how we call them hubs. So for us, a hub is basically a connected drive backend running in a data center. The connected drive system on the backend has about 4 million lines of code. Most all Java EE. So you can see this is where we're coming from as the 16-year-old system, Java EE, Enterprise IT, and now changing rapidly into this tech company. And we have to make sure that all these services come with us to the new age. We're at the moment talking about I would say roughly 300 microservices. We are in the process of slicing them, so many of them are not yet there. So we have monolithic applications, as you can imagine, grown over time, and now we really do vertical slicing and bringing them into the new world. So what are our challenges? There's, as you can imagine, starting from the applications, from the monoliths, a lot of challenges already there. But then there's more in addition. We're selling every year about 2.5 million cars, which is great, right? So it saves my job, but also brings more load on the system. And we're not just selling cars, but also we are adding more services in all the cars that are already there. So this means we are at the moment dealing with a 30% growth of the requests every year. And you can imagine if you're doing on-premise traditional IT, this is quite challenging just to add more servers into this, the processes that running. And so we are highly looking into the field of cloud computing, not just off-premise, but also on-premise. All these cars are connected with a private channel. Like I said, they have a SIM card in them, private channel to the BMW network, and then they are being served by these 3 different hubs. BMW cars, and there we come to another challenge, are not just available in Germany or in these countries where we have the data centers, but worldwide. We are in 46 different countries. We're offering our digital services, our connected drive. And as you can imagine, if you have only 3 data centers worldwide, you can run into problems. Could be latency, could be that in a deployment something goes wrong and you're having this for a customer that's connected in New Zealand to the European data center that comes into the rush hour. In Germany might everything be fine, but in New Zealand we have the problem that the connected drive services are going out during rush hour, which is not ideal, or regulatory things. So a little fun fact, for example, in Korea we're having issues that certain data is not allowed to leave the country. Not what you think, no, it's basically map data. Korea, due to the Korean War, is not allowed to have map data exported out of the country, so we just cannot provide certain services until we have really all the map storage and all the connection in this country. So mapped update over the air, what you can book in Germany, is not available in this country. So as you can see, and this is things that are more and more coming up, we need to be more flexible in order to provide our services to all our customers. Services, just to give you an idea, as you can imagine with 300 microservices, there's more than just for use cases, but we're talking about things like real-time traffic. This is what everyone sees when they turn on their car. Either you see the green and the red lines on your navigation system and know where the traffic is, or you don't see it. So if this system is down, immediately a big customer impact. We have the whole field of driving assistance, so giving to the fleet information about current situations on the street, for example, if there was an accident, to warn the customers. We have, which is a big driver for us actually, the emergency call feature. So if you have an accident, you can push this button, get a connection to the back end, can talk to someone. This is since this year mandatory in the European Union. By that, adding a SIM card to a car is not a cost factor anymore, but has to be on there. So every new car is automatically connected. In the past, the customer was paying for this. Now it's in every car. And of course, the whole field of autonomous driving is coming up and is something that we are already looking at. So with the idea of cloud hubs, what do we want from it? Of course, scalability and stability, that's one of the main features. If you have so many customers worldwide connected to this backend, it's clear that you want to have this stable and you want to have this scalable. That's no question. But what we are also looking into is basically what I just mentioned with the new data centers that we need to bring up. We really want to be able, within ideally hours, to start up a new data center in a new region if required, and then connect the customers on these data centers. So really, data center as a service is one of the big goals. Therefore, we're going everything infrastructure as code, terraforming everything. We really want to be like as flexible as possible here. And then what we are dealing at the moment is that we're having, due to some processes, we do have some black boxes. I mean, many of you would know this. If you have some service that's maintained by another organizational unit, they might not let you on there all the time. So what you have to do, you have to write a ticket and then hope they will do it right and so on. In the cloud, this can be done better, right? So if you design it new, you really want to have like this vertical integration of all the teams, of all the layers, communication from the back end completely to the car in a self-service manner, and empower the DevOps teams. Really give the power back to the developers so they can make the best decision, they can maintain their services, and don't have to rely on too many other people where they cannot look into these systems. So what are we planning this year? We are in the process at the moment of really, like I said, everything infrastructure as code, terraforming, preparing everything, because we want to connect about 100,000 customers in the Asia-Pacific region to this new cloud hub, just in order to give them a latency benefits, and also the benefit of having, if there's an issue, then we, with like deployments or something, we don't have them on the same data center where this deployment issue is happening. So we're rewriting for that a lot of applications, making them cloud native. It's a very exciting project. I'm looking forward, so in about a month, we want to connect the first really productive customers. We're working very good and like intensively with AWS here, AWS Professional Services, and with NordCloud. We are really bringing the best approaches as a template to these to our new cloud hubs. And of course, what we're also doing as BMW at the moment, BMW has a past of outsourcing a lot of things. This is also what we're doing, really like incorporating the knowledge back to the company, getting engineers back on board in order we can do things like this that are really cool on ourselves, in order to really have, with this approach here, the first workloads and a kind of big workload on these on this backend. Looking very much forward for EKS in the Frankfurt region. So hopefully AWS hears that. This is something we really want to focus on. Everything is container, and we really don't want to maintain the underlying stack. So EKS Fargate is one of the things we're looking at. I hope this gave you a little bit of an idea of what BMW does in the connected drive field. If you have questions, feel free to come to me. I'm going to be here. And yeah, so thank you very much.
Awesome. Thank you, Alex. So can't wait to see what Alex and the team at BMW do with the next generation of connected vehicles. So if you think about these 21st century architectures, you want to be well architected. And when you think of well architected, there's a framework we've developed which is kind of made up of 5 pillars: operational excellence, security, reliability, performance and efficiency, and cost optimization. But one of the most important ones is the principles of security. Because if I've learned something over the last 25 years of building internet scale applications, is that if you don't start with security, it's impossible to put it after the fact. It's never as good. And so you want to be thinking about the identity and access management through to incident response as you go through with this. And if you look at that, again, that list of 125 plus services, the security services are in red. I'm not going to go through all of them in detail, but some really good ones to focus on. Macy, for example, looking at is there personal identifiable information, for example, stored within your data lake, or Guard Duty that can look at the threat analysis of the environment without actually causing any type of performance issues for your production scale platforms. So just a little bit of an insight as to what you can do there. And the most important thing is actually this rise of ubiquitous encryption, where all your data is encrypted in transit, you want it encrypted at rest, you want to have that fully managed within the key management service, whether they're our keys we're providing or your own keys that you're providing. It gives you the greatest choice and flexibility in how you manage this end to end. It's also fully auditable and gives you restricted access. Again, this is really important in regulated environments, and again, with GDPR now taking effect, this is what you need to be focusing on. And tomorrow, as I mentioned, Mark Ryland's going to dive into this in a lot more detail around what this means in compliance and regulated workloads. And the end result of this is that security is everybody's job. Just like we're all builders, we also have a role to play in maintaining the security of the platform. And you also have to do this worldwide. We're also fully compliant with GDPR as a provider, as a data provider. We actually announced this kind of 2 months ago prior to GDPR taking effect. So this means for you that are building applications on top of AWS, you can do that knowing that the parts that we're responsible for are compliant, and you just need to worry about what the applications you're building on top meet the requirements that you need to meet. So with that, just to kind of wrap everything up, I just wanted to give you a little bit of a preview and a sneak into what I think is one of the cool new services, which is Amazon Sumerian. What Sumerian is, this is a way to allow developers who are looking to build virtual hosts or get involved in the world of augmented reality and virtual reality, which in the past has required incredibly expensive software, specialized hardware, and as we start wearing goggles in our own lounge room to further isolate ourselves from the real world, developing things in this becomes really important. And what Sumerian does is it's one of the easiest and fastest ways to get started in this. It just runs in a browser, the costs are really low, and you can enhance a scene by putting objects in it, kind of like a game engine. But to give you an idea of what you can do with this, was going to show a quick example of Christina, for example, talking to us as a virtual host. So let's play that.
Hello, welcome to the AWS Berlin Summit. I am Christine and I am a Sumerian host. Today we are announcing the expanded availability of Sumerian in the Frankfurt region, as well as Sao Paulo and San Francisco. In addition, you may now customize the clothing that a host wears in your scene, like this. Pretty cool. Willkommen in Deutschland.
She'll be replacing me in my job pretty soon, I think. Well, this is a little bit of a sneak preview. And as she said, she did do a service announcement that's available right here in Frankfurt region. You can do lots of fun things with Sumerian. You can play some good practical jokes with friends with it. But you know, with that, there's never been a greater time to build. So go build Berlin. I can't wait to see what you do in the next 12 months as well. Thank you very much.